and welcome to MS4. And today I'm going to be sharing with you my experience working on a Chanel counter. This is the beauty of business, and I'm going to share with you the things I learned. I worked on the Chanel counter for about a year, and then in women's fine fragrances for about 6 and change. Time is kind of a wibbly wobbly thing for me, so I think that's pretty close. But the things I learned while I was working on the Chanel counter have affected my life as a consumer of makeup and also as a person who is interested in the business of makeup. And with these videos, I title them The Beauty of Business because I think there's a lot of interesting and wonderful things that we can learn from the beauty of business, but I don't want to put the focus on always the negative, because that's very easy for people to look at the business side and think that it's awful and horrible. But I really want to highlight some of the things that I think are really great about the business side of beauty. So today I have 7 things I'm going to share with you that I learned from working at the Chanel cosmetics counter. The first one, business structure. Now, 10 years ago, we didn't have the same level of sophistication that we do now as far as knowing what the beauty business is up to. Now there's a lot more reporting on what are the parent companies, when a company gets bought out by somebody, what does that look like, who's manufacturing cosmetics for other businesses, and what the earnings are for different businesses in the cosmetics and fragrance world. Now, when I started working for Chanel, I didn't know a lot of that. And when you're walking into a mall situation with different cosmetics counters, high-end cosmetics counters, most of the time, many of the counters you see are all owned by one brand, one parent company. Right now, there's about 13 companies that own most of the cosmetics that you wear. Now with Chanel, they are actually still a privately owned company. Clarins is a privately owned company, Chantecaille, privately owned company, but a lot of the other businesses are publicly traded businesses. Say for instance, you're walking into that mall, many of the counters are Estee Lauder counters, or their parent company is L'Oreal. So if you go to a Lancome counter, that's who you're actually dealing with as a parent company. And each of these smaller companies is a different flavor, but one of the 13 brands generally owns them, except for these that are privately owned. Now, like I said, Chanel is still privately owned. They are not publicly traded. The way that this makes a difference is that many of the decisions in a publicly owned company are more about stock prices and making sure that the investments and the investors are taken care of. In a private business, their decision making is about profit, don't get me wrong, but sometimes there are other overarching things that they decide to focus on that are not about just the making money for the shareholders, for the stock prices, for things like that. Now, in some cases that can be very good because they can decide on certain focuses that they're invested in themselves. And in other ways, maybe it's not as good because they're not as potentially swayed by other pressures that more public companies are swayed by. In the case of Chanel, one of the negative things is that they don't have as much pressure to make a more varied shade range for certain items. Take for instance the bronzer that up until just a little bit ago had one color. So there's not the pressure for that. But I did learn as I started working for Chanel that having a privately owned company did have some benefits, and I appreciated going to the Clarins counter because they had a definite focus that they maintained as far as the types of ingredients that they used and what their teaching strategy was for teaching people who are working on the counter. Same with Chanel, very definite teaching structure. Everyone goes for some sort of education, usually in cosmetics counters. And especially when new products are launched, usually you'll get one of those products to test and try out. You'll go to an education, you'll go to a launch party for things. So that's really nice. The nice thing about, and I'm using nice a lot, I apologize, about working for Chanel is that we tended to get better gratis, free stuff than some of the other companies like the Estee Lauder company, especially at Christmas. And I did save my favorite piece of gratis from Chanel. This is my Chanel hand mirror. It's gotten beaten up a lot, but it's my favorite piece of gratis that I ever got from Chanel, was that mirror. But because it was a privately owned business, they were able to be very focused on how they wanted to bring about their messaging, their education, and how they wanted to have us treat our customers and focus on our customers. So I really appreciated that. But the first thing I did learn was about that business structure, the fact that lots of companies are owned by other companies, and that even though the brand is specifically geared in a way to attract a certain type of customer by the types of products or the ingredients they use, all of them are that corporate business model that has a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as it were, and a lot of focus on the bottom line and shareholders, where private companies don't necessarily. So anyway, now there's a lot more business reporting on this. Most people know what the earnings of lots of different cosmetics companies are. Chanel only posted what their earnings were, I think 2 years, I believe it was either 17 or 18 or 18 and 19, that they posted what their earnings were. So it's a little more private. It's not as public because they're not a traded company. So let's move from that part over into things that I discovered on the counter that were more people focused. The second thing that I learned is that almost everyone, no matter how beautiful, stunning, seemingly, easy, effortless their look is, almost everyone is overly focused on their flaws. So when you get someone and you're sitting them in a chair and you're doing their makeup, they are so focused on the texture of their skin, the weird hairs growing in different places, the, under eye discoloration, whatever it is that they see when they look in the mirror that really stands out to them, that is their ultimate focus. And it's not necessarily that everyone else sees this. You get to feel a lot better about the strange hairs that you have or the strange texture you have, because when you sit everyone down in a chair, you see that everyone has these things, and that it's not a thing where you can apply a filter on a photo. You're in real life. Everyone has these issues, and it's not as obvious to everyone else generally, whatever it is that you're focused on. So in a way, working on the counter made me relax a little bit and go, everybody has these issues. Nobody's really focusing that deeply on mine. I will be harder on myself than anyone else would be, except for like trolls on the internet. Just saying. But everyone, almost everyone, you would rarely meet somebody that was just very confident and not overly focused on whatever that flaw was. So that's number 2. Number 3, and I appreciated this training for Chanel, you never know who your customer is. During our Chanel training, they talked about a young teenage girl who came to the counter, and she didn't have any money to have anybody do a makeover for her, because some of the counters would either you'd have to pay for a makeover or you'd have to buy a certain number of products before a free makeover could happen. And so Chanel was never about that. And so the story goes that the person gave her a makeover. She loved the makeup, but she couldn't buy anything. She didn't have any money. So she left, but she was very happy. And then the next day, her grandmother came in, very wealthy woman, and bought, everything they'd used on the young girl on her face, and had this huge, humongous sale. Well, I think it's a good takeaway that you don't know who your customer is, that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover necessarily, because a lot of people, you would be surprised the number of people that come into the counter wearing sweats or tracksuits or something they came off working for, and really are your customer. They purchase a lot, they love makeup, and if you try and make a decision beforehand about how you're going to help someone or how much effort you're going to put into it, you're really doing a disservice to people who are your customer, or who may be your customer if they're treated with the respect that everyone should be. I like to think about you never know who customer is. I was working on the counter, and one of the ranchers came in. His wife was a Chanel customer, but he was one of these people that had the dry, weathered, sunburnt skin from working out in the pasture all day. And his wife had had some of our skin cream. It was one of the most heavy-duty skin creams, very expensive. And he's like, I tried my wife's skin cream and that was the best darn thing ever. And he ended up being a regular customer that would buy 2 and 3 of these skin creams at a time. He was a regular repeat customer at a fairly high rate. And here he was, a gentleman that, had you looked at him, he would come in, he's dirty, he's filthy, he's got his work clothes on, his skin is dry, and he was one of our best customers for Chanel skincare because he loved it. So to me, I just think about him whenever I think about the fact that you never know who your customer is. So you just need to be there, be serving everybody who comes in without judgment if at all possible. So that was one of my favorite things. The fourth thing is, it's better to sell a customer one thing that they're going to love rather than trying to sell them multiple things that they'll regret or return. I really hate returns. It messes with me, and I work really hard to find the right item for people so that they're not returning things and that they do love what they get. Whenever you're trained in cosmetics and high-end, they always want you to do add-ons. So if you come in looking for a lipstick, they want you to find the customer a lipstick and then try to add on a lip liner and a gloss. Or if they come in for an eye pencil, then you want to sell them a mascara and an eye quad or a single shadow. Those sorts of things that you're always supposed to be trying to go for 3. Now some customers are up for that, but I try and really find out, because at a certain price point, if you're coming in for a beautiful lipstick and it's going to make you feel a certain way, it's going to feel a certain way in your hand, it's going to have a Chanel logo on it, that's one thing. But a lip liner doesn't necessarily feel the same way. It doesn't have some of the same emotional attachments, and you might look in your collection and you have a very cheap pencil that works really great, that's going to look great with that lipstick, that didn't require that price point. And so I'm less willing to try and move for the extra sale. I want that customer to love what it is. I want us to go through the colors. I want them to see it on their skin. I want them to smell it, to feel it if it's a texture, to think about different ways they could wear a single item, and to be really excited and happy about their purchase. The worst thing is when you get people that come in and they purchase a lot and then they have buyer's remorse. I understand this because sometimes you want the beautiful things, you want that endorphin hit of buying something, you want to feel lush and luxe, you want to feel satisfied in a certain way. And then when you get something home and you realize you've been chasing the dragon and you've been, having that fit for something, it's not about the items itself, it was about that buying of things. And then you feel bad, or your bank account feels bad. And it's not that I mind getting returns from people who get something home and try it and in different light or in different whatever, feel like it just doesn't work for them. I think that's a fabulous reason to return something, and I think people should feel good about that. I got this home, I got it in different lighting, it doesn't work for me. I've had certain foundations that if I'm in low light, I'm in certain lighting, it looks great, but if I try and wear it outdoors, oh, it's awful. It's very, very awful. So it's one of those things that they might get at home and go, you know, this is not a foundation for all areas of my life. I need to return it. I don't mind that, because I feel like I've done my best due diligence to take a customer through what their product can do and what it's going to look like. And if it doesn't in the real world match up to those expectations, I'll take it back. Not a problem. But it's hard when someone's bringing back something that's a buyer's remorse return, because you're confronted with their shame. It's almost as if you're highly empathetic, you probably really shouldn't be working on a cosmetics counter, by the way. But they're coming in, they're ashamed, and they're trying to make up a reason why they didn't want to keep it, but none of it's real, and you can kind of feel that. But it's this whole, like, it makes it like it was a dirty experience. Like there's something that, you know, it was not just the joy of having something, the joy of using something, the joy of adding something to a collection that was really beautiful or special or useful. It's the, I was driven to buy this, I am ashamed, and I am going to bring this back to you, and you're going to feel that shame with me. And that was the worst experience ever, is to have that buyer's remorse where you can feel the shame dripping off someone, and you can't blame them. It's a high-priced item. Of course they might feel bad about getting something, or realize after the fact that, you know, they got caught up in the excitement of it and they can't afford that. But having to share that feeling of shame and guilt and just unhappiness is really hard. So for me, I was all about really working hard to make sure that this was a piece of makeup that a customer would love, could use, could be proud of, and that whenever they saw it or used it, they would feel good about that experience, and not to have something that I pushed them into and so they felt ashamed or at a deficit monetarily because of what I had done. So that's one of the things for me, that it's better to find something that somebody is going to love and cherish and really be proud of, than trying to oversell and have things that people will either regret or return. Number 5, samples work, especially with skincare. Sampling works. With color cosmetics, it's you really need to see something on your skin, because even though you love the way a color looks, that color may not read right on your skin. It may look muddy, it may look too garish, whatever. So with color cosmetics, it's good to actually have something put on your face. Swatching is the next best, but the best thing is to put it on your face. But sampling works for skincare especially. I like to get samples from Sephora and Ulta because I do like to try things. With Chanel, when I got to the counter, I had a lovely counter manager. She was perfectly wonderful, other than this one thing. And she wanted us to treat the samples like they were solid gold. You only gave out one per customer, and it had to be a good buy. And then these were just doled out so sparingly. But the problem was, when I got there, we had bags and bags of samples of skincare that had been replaced. It had either gone where we weren't selling that article anymore, or it had been reformulated, and so, or the samples themselves had basically reached their freshness dating, so they weren't good samples anymore. So we had all of these bags that at one point in time had been gold, but now were nothing but clutter and utterly useless. And so I would get in trouble occasionally because I would liberally sample my customers. But the thing was, it's like, you can't have this item that's gold, that has a shelf life, that's going to turn into dust, and just hoard it. It doesn't do anybody any good. It's not a good sales tool. You need to be sampling, and people need to be able to use skincare for multiple days in a row in order to have any idea of whether or not it's going to be working for them. The first thing they'll find out, does it have a scent that they can deal with? Does it have a texture they can deal with? If it makes them feel like they're putting slime on their face and that's not what they're in for, they need to know that. And you are saving them buying a full-size product, taking it home, hating it, and returning it. And at that point in time, it just has to be damaged out. Nobody can use that. It's done for. But the idea is they need to be able to use it for multiple days, and they need to have enough of idea to say, I'm going to take a chance that this skincare is going to work for me over time. Like if it says it's going to decrease my wrinkles, I might not see that in a 3-day sample. If you give them double samples, they may see it in a week, depending on the efficacy of the product. But they need a couple of decent sized samples in order to really see if that product is going to work for them. Now, I realize that there are people that are just going around only wanting samples. They never want to buy anything. And you do have to be, have a good memory for those people. Go, I sampled you last week, like, sorry, don't have any, gotta come back. But for the most part, I believe very firmly in sampling. I think that's the only way that people can really fall in love with your skincare product. And it's a little bit safer of a way for them to try it and feel better about it. And if they know that you're willing to give them a sample of whatever new comes out, they're much more willing to trust you in the future when you say, hey, I've got this great product, I don't have any samples, but would you like to buy it? To go, okay, we're going to take a chance on that. You have not steered me wrong. You've been willing to give me something to try out if you have it. And so therefore, I will trust you to buy this new product. So I feel like samples work, and people need to think about the tools that they have for selling things and actually use those. Especially things that have a freshness dating that end, or things that are reformulated often. You've got to be able to use those sales tools while you have them, and it doesn't do anyone any good to hoard them. But samples do work. People will come back, and the only thing as a sales associate is that they may not end up buying it from me. They may end up buying it from someone else, from the hard work that I've done sampling someone, but it does my counter good, and in the end that's good for me, and they will eventually find their way back to the counter where I'm there, and they'll remember that I had given them good information, good samples, and that they can trust me for my other sales that I would like to make with them. Number 6, sometimes you're wrong even when you're right. I already relayed my one sad Chanel story about the customer who came in who wanted a new lip color that looked horrible on her. Her old one did, and I had told her, hey, this new color looks better, and her fears brought her back to repurchasing the old color. So even though I was right, the customer in the end was right. My other sad Chanel story, I had a woman from India who came in, an older woman, and she wanted to be fitted with a color for our most, the foundation with the most coverage. And so I sat her in the chair, I found her color, did her face in it, and she looked in the mirror after I finished. She's just very sad. She's like, no, this is way too dark. And so I'm like, okay, maybe she likes just a little bit lighter, a little more, so it has more luminosity. We're going to try just a little bit lighter, but still in her color range. So I did that color, and she looked in the mirror again. She says, no, this is so dark. This is just not right at all. Can't you do something? Can't you see? And so I went through, instead of doing a whole face, I was like, okay, we're just going to swatch the colors for her. And I went to the lightest color we had, and this is Chanel. This is the most porcelain color we had. She picked it out, did a whole face in it. She looked like a ghost. It was about 15 shades lighter than what her actual shade was. But when she looked in the mirror, she nodded and she says, that's perfect, that's beautiful, that's the perfect shade. Thank you so much for fitting me with the right color. And she bought the foundation and she left. And I was so sad. That memory's burned in my brain. But it's that idea that I don't get to judge in the end what is going to make a person happy with the product that I am selling them. It is my job, in some ways, to sell them the thing or the shade that they want. So that was a hard lesson, but it was good in some ways because I think I'm less judgy about people beauty YouTubers, people in real life, all of that are doing something with their makeup that I think is wrong or problematic or not as good as it could be. Because I have to sit back and think, nobody's setting out to look horrible. That's not their goal. And I don't know what is in their heart. I don't know what is in their history. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish. And it is not my job to judge, even though I feel like I'm right in my taste, in my judgment of something. Sometimes I'm wrong even when I'm right. And so I have to take that step back and go, sometimes someone else has chosen and I need to respect that. So that lesson of sometimes I'm wrong even when I'm right, I feel like applies to my everyday life, and especially to my life as someone who looks at beauty and is trying to decide things, is trying to judge. And it's like, where does my right to judge begin and where does it end? And usually it's just right here. This is my judgment zone. I get to judge whether I think that I look beautiful, what I'm doing is right or wrong. And that's how I need to think about it. And I think about this woman from India who I fitted with Chanel's most porcelain color. And that's what I remember, is sometimes you're wrong, even if you're right. So that's number 6. And then number 7, I'm gonna end with something more fun. One of the things about working for a cosmetics company that is luxury, that is high price point, you end up thinking about those things of like, what's worth it? But that kind of mental calculation is always different for everyone, and it's not always monetary. And what I wanted to think about from a standpoint of the job is that the makeup itself, I'm gonna go geeky for a moment here on you. There's a Star Trek, the original series episode called Mud's Women, with these women who have taken these pills to make them be absolutely beautiful and unable to have men with, men could not withstand them, they were so beautiful. And Bones is in the elevator, asking about the beauties, like, but pound for pound, are these women really more beautiful than any other women you've known? And, trying to use a logic to it. Are they really that much more beautiful? So when I think about Chanel, I think about the fact that they do make some beautiful, beautiful products. But I have to think about it this way, pound for pound, are they more beautiful than other colors or things that I can get in other places? And it comes back that sometimes yes, sometimes no. There are elements of like sheen to an eye color or the muted tones of a perfect blush. But there are products that I can get for a much lesser price that have as much wonder and joy to them as these. But when you're working for a luxury brand, one of the things that you are selling is an ethos, the luxury ethos. You're selling the Chanel name, that idea that this is a fashion house. This is something that only a certain echelon of people were able to experience or get, that is now, been handed down from the gods so that the poor people below can also have a taste of this rapture. And so the thing is, sometimes if you're trying to fit into a social group, this is your ticket, you pull out your Chanel. And again, trying not to judge, sometimes that's completely worth it. You being able to fit into a social circle makes you feel at home, comforted, safe, whatever. For other people, it's like the magic. You open the Chanel, the compact, and suddenly you feel beautiful. That's something that, also may be worth whatever it is that you paid for it. When you see it sitting on a counter, it's so beautiful that it just makes you smile. It makes your day perfect. Or you're thinking about the spokesperson, you're holding your bottle of Coco Mademoiselle and you're thinking of the spokesperson, you're thinking of the advertising, you're thinking of that beautiful life. And sometimes life is hard and something beautiful makes it better. Now, I'm not saying that you should sell your children or your kidneys or whatever so you can have a bottle of Chanel, but I am saying that sometimes luxury is worth it in the way that it does something to you, it transports you, it almost changes your being, your energy. And you could get that from something else. You could do yoga and meditate and come out and be a better person. I'm not saying that there's not other ways to do this, but sometimes the beautiful thing makes your life feel better, and sometimes that's just what you need. So for me, the idea of working for Chanel, you don't need Chanel, you don't have to have it. It doesn't pound for pound, make it better than other cosmetics that you can purchase. But there's an ethos about it, and sometimes that ethos is beautiful and you're sharing something beautiful with other people. So that was one of the things that I learned, is sometimes when life is hard, sometimes a piece of cosmetic can make it better. So anyway, those were my 7 things that I learned from working at Chanel. And I know this is something that's long and convoluted and doesn't tell you anything necessarily about, is this mascara better than any other mascara? But hopefully you'll kind of get an idea of, when you're working on a counter, some of the things that are cosmetics related but aren't directly related to the products themselves. All right, well, thank you all for staying with me. I hope you are having a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.